So we are going to be talking first about common backyard snakes of Florida, and I am focusing mostly on species that can be found in the Sarasota area, which are mostly species that are going to be found throughout Central Florida and many of them throughout the whole state. We are not going to talk about every single native species of snakes. We're going to first look at ones that are really commonly found in your backyard that you're more likely to see and have questions about. And then there's just some other really cool native snakes that we'll take a look at that aren't as common to see in your backyard. And those are just fun to learn about as well. So let me introduce myself, as I haven't yet. I'm Dr. Catherine Clements. I'm the Ecology and Natural Resources Educator here at University of Florida IFAS Extension in Sarasota County. I do a variety of programs on wildlife, native and invasive species, nature meditation, and the health benefits of nature for programs for both young and old alike. I have a bachelor's degree from State University of New York in Buffalo in environmental studies. It's how I started my professional career. Then I decided to be a doctor for a couple decades. And now I have come back to environmental education, which I've had two really amazing careers that I love a lot. So I've been here at the Sarasota County Extension for the last 5.5 years. And prior to this past year, I also lived in a state park with my husband for about 20 years. So even when I wasn't doing environmental education, I was living full on in the natural environment here in Florida. Jacob, why don't you introduce yourself? Can you unmute?
All right. Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Jacob. I'm currently an environmental education and outreach intern here at the Extension office in Sarasota County. I currently go to school at the University of South Florida, studying global sustainability, and some of my passions include education, the outdoors, and of course, in sustainability. It's been a great opportunity here at the office, and I helped put together this presentation, so I'm really looking forward to sharing it with you guys. Thank you.
Great. Yes, I want to make sure I thank Jacob. You are going to see he's only been with me for a couple days, and the first thing he did was put together this presentation. He's done a great job. So very much appreciate his help with this.
Thank you.
All right, so let me just tell you a little bit about county extension offices in case you're not familiar with them. They're a partnership between the county that they are in and the University of Florida and the USDA. So in our state, we have an extension office associated with all 67 counties here, and they are part of that land grant institution mission where universities in each state were given land in order to build their university. And those land grant universities then have extension offices that extend their research and resources to address the needs of the local communities. So each extension office is a little bit different based on its local county that it needs to help work with. And so we have quite a large extension office, and we address issues and questions and education in all the areas that you see on your screen. We are a blend here in Sarasota County between rural and suburban and urban communities. So we address a lot of different things for our local county. Here are just some of the programs that we deliver. Up there in the upper right-hand corner is the Master Naturalist program, which I'm a lead instructor for. That's a fabulous program. If you like some of the things we're talking about today and you're interested in learning more about our Florida ecosystems, then that is a great program to take part in. It's an adult education program through the University of Florida that's all about learning more about our Florida ecosystems and sharing that knowledge with others. And I'll tell you a little bit more at the end of the presentation today because we have an upcoming class. All right, so let's jump into our snakes before it gets much later. So this is what we're going to talk about today. Some general snake information, snake biology, the importance of snakes to our ecosystem. Then we're going to look at a whole bunch of common backyard species and some of those that are less common in your backyard, but still pretty cool to look at. And then we'll just have one slide on some really bizarre snake lookalikes and talk about some snake species that are protected, what you can do to help snakes, and actually what you can do if you encounter a snake and how to stay safe around snakes. So that's sort of our outline for today. Once again, part of why we're doing this is because July 16th every year is World Snake Day, which aims to increase awareness and respect for snakes worldwide. Snakes have been here for over 170 million years, and they have throughout history been a thing of myths and legends. But they do play that important role in our ecosystem. And unfortunately, snakes have been persecuted in reality and also sometimes symbolically and in myths. So we want to try to demystify some of that and increase your respect and awareness about the snakes. So a little bit about snake biology, because they're pretty cool animals. They are a reptile and they are legless, so they have no legs and they have scales. They don't have eyelids and they sleep with their eyes open, like we see this snake here. Could be awake, could be asleep. And what I think is really cool is they have nostrils, but they actually smell by flicking out their tongues, picking up molecules of scent from the air and then touching their tongues to the roof of their mouths, where there are glands that then take that information up to be decoded by their brain. So really interesting way to smell. So when they're sticking out their tongues, they're not trying to taste necessarily, they're trying to smell. They have up to 1,200 bones in their body, which is amazing. They have lots more ribs and vertebrae than we do. Snakes are carnivorous and kill their prey, and they do that either through injection of venom, so that's going to be our venomous snakes, or constriction, meaning they squeeze. Some snakes don't actually do either, and they more just grab their prey and hold it down until they can swallow it whole. And most snakes do actually swallow their prey whole, even though all snakes have teeth, even the non-venomous ones. They don't necessarily chew their prey. They're going to swallow it whole. They find their prey through either pit holes that are in front of their eyes, if they're a pit viper, and that senses the body heat of their prey. Or snakes are also very sensitive to vibration. They actually can feel the vibration of movement in their lower jaw. They are ectothermic, which I think is a fun science word. So ectothermic is the fancy word for being cold-blooded. So their temperature is basically regulated by their environment. So one thing to know is that if it's a cold day and you see a snake, it's probably not going to move very quickly. You're probably going to move faster than the snake on a cold day. Of course, we all live in Florida and it's pretty warm in Florida. So often you will find snakes, just like other reptiles, coming out into the sun to bask in order to increase their body temperature and get their metabolism going. And then here's another fun science word. They experience ecdysis. So ecdysis is just the fancy science word for shedding their skin. I looked that up. I had never even heard that word before. So if you didn't know that word, you're right there with me. I just learned it the other day. So ecdysis is the shedding of skin. And of course, that's how reptiles grow. It also helps them to remove any parasites they might have. And then another interesting fun fact about snakes in general, 70% of them are oviparous, meaning they lay eggs. Although about 30% of them are viviparous, meaning they actually give live birth. And a lot of the snakes that have live birth are actually our venomous snakes that have a way to protect themselves pretty easily. But neither snakes, whether they lay eggs or give live birth, actually take care of their eggs, except here in Florida, our invasive Burmese python and some of the other pythons worldwide will actually take care of their clutch of eggs, and the female will stay with those eggs. So importance of snakes. First of all, they're really important in the entire food web, whether they're important as prey or predators. They are an important part of that food web. And of course, if we remove something from the food web, there are often many unintended consequences to doing that. So it doesn't just impact one other species or one other thing, it impacts many things. So snakes are eaten as prey by many types of animals, including alligators, hawks, other raptors, and wading birds. And then snakes, of course, are also predators, and they eat small animals such as rats, mice, insects, lizards, and frogs. So this is where they really provide an ecosystem service to us humans, is they're helping to control a lot of the animals that we would consider pests. And without snakes, there might be much heftier populations of those pest animals. So snakes are an integral component of our Florida's ecology, and we should try to treat them with respect. If we don't want to love them, that's okay, but we should at least try to treat them with respect. Here's some more general information about snakes too, that there's over 3,000 species of snakes, and they're found everywhere but Antarctica, Ireland, New Zealand, Iceland, and Greenland. Only 7% of snakes worldwide are venomous and have enough venom. So there's more that are venomous, but only 7% of all those snakes actually have enough venom to kill or seriously injure a human. And they are found throughout all sorts of areas here in Florida. And then there's differing reports about how many native species there are. So I've got two different numbers here because one agency says there's 44 different species of native snakes in Florida. I believe that's the FWC's count. And then I believe the UF count is 46. So somewhere around 45 species of native snakes in Florida, and only 6 of those are venomous. And here in Sarasota County and throughout Central Florida, only 4 snakes in this area are going to be venomous snakes. And we'll talk about those either now or in a separate presentation. So most of our Florida snakes are harmless and beneficial and benefit us by controlling those pest populations. And our native snakes can range from 6 inches to 8 feet in length, and they vary in color and pattern. Whereas our invasive snakes are, most of them are going to be much larger than that, or have the ability to be much larger than that. There are at least 50 species of non-native snakes, according to the FWC, which have been reported to be found in Florida, but only 5 of those are known to have established breeding population, and 2 of those species are considered invasive. And of course, the poster child for invasive snakes is the Burmese python, which I'm sure all of us have heard about. So let's jump into talking about our common backyard snakes. And this, in my opinion, is probably the most likely snake you might see in your backyard. This is the black racer or North American racer. It's a lovely snake. It can be 20 to 56 inches long. It's relatively thin. It's not a super wide-bodied snake. It's pretty thin. It's generally black unless it's a juvenile. So we'll talk about that in a minute. You see the picture of the juvenile on your slide there, which looks very different. But an adult black racer is going to be black with white markings on the chin and throat. If you look at the juvenile picture, you see that that snake is quite differently colored and has a very distinct pattern. And often these juvenile black racers get mistaken for the venomous dusky pygmy rattlesnake. And so one of the things I want you to note is notice the big circular eye with the round pupil. In these juvenile black racers, that eyeball is really stands out to me when I see them. And it is, to me, the best way to tell this juvenile black racer from our dusky pygmy rattlesnake, which is a venomous snake. This is probably the snake that I get the most questions about here at the office because people see it. And they are concerned that it might be a pygmy rattlesnake. But just look at that eye, very prominent, and the round pupil. So these are found throughout every county in mainland Florida and in the Keys. They can be found in a variety of habitats, both our natural dry habitats and wetland areas, as well as suburban areas and backyards. They are extremely fast and agile, so when they are frightened, they will take off, hence the name racer. They are often seen during the day. They are more of a diurnal snake, and they will often be seen periscoping, which is what you might imagine it would be if you think about a submarine periscope. So black racers, and there are other snakes that do this too, but black racers will often be amongst your foliage, and then they'll sort of stick their neck and head out and look around. And so we call that periscoping. It is one of the most seen snakes in Florida, and it's super helpful to have this snake in your backyard because they eat a number of different types of rodents as well as even some insects. And they're not constrictors, and they're certainly not venomous. They simply just grab their prey and swallow it. There's another picture of one. So you can see this one's coiled up, resting on a, looks like, well, some type of palm frond. And you can see, once again, even in the adult, you're going to have that round eye with the round pupil. And then you're going to see that white throat area, and that's your black racer. Red corn snakes are sometimes commonly seen as well, and these are absolutely beautiful snakes. They're going to be 30 to 48 inches, so 3 to 4 feet long. They are brightly colored and brightly patterned, and then they have sort of this spear-shaped pattern on their head, so that's an identifying feature. And they are also in every county in Florida and in the Keys, and they're found under rocks, logs, tree bark, and also on palm fronds, as you see here in this picture. They can be in forests and fields, but also still found in suburban areas in the WUI. So WUI stands for Wildland Urban Interface. So as we continue to develop more and more of our residential and commercial areas along our wild areas, that's what we call the Wildland Urban Interface. And of course, as we do that, the wildlife that normally would be living in more of our wild natural areas are going to be seen more often in our suburban and backyard areas because we are developing into those wild areas. So that's when you're more likely to see one of the corn snakes, is when it's a newer developed area or an area that has a lot of preserve area or wild area adjacent to it. These guys are primarily nocturnal, so you won't see them anywhere near as often because they're going to be out at night. They are terrestrial, meaning they're more commonly found on the ground, but they also like to climb trees. So you will see them, if you do see them, you might see them in trees, on palm fronds, like we see here, on a tree branch, for instance. And the reason they got their corn snake name is twofold. One, because they used to be found in areas where corn was stored on farms called corn cribs, because of course the rodents would go there to eat corn and the corn snakes would follow the rodents. But also the belly of the corn snake has a pattern, black and white, that looks a lot like what we used to call Indian corn, like that corn that's often out around the holidays that has all sorts of different colors. And that's what their bellies look like you can see in this picture here. So you see that black and white patterning on the corn snake. And then this is a snake that has been confused both taxonomically. So there's been some questions about in the past whether or not rat snakes were separate from corn snakes. Currently, they are considered separate. So our corn snake is Pantherophis gudatus. I could be completely butchering that. Whereas our eastern rat snake, its species is Allegheniensis. So it is considered a separate species. And they do look different, although the juvenile does have some of that patterning similar to the corn snake. The adults have more of these longitudinal stripes, and the adults can be red, orangish, yellowish. So I've seen a beautiful yellow one that was about 5 feet long. It's absolutely beautiful. So that was more like a khaki yellow with brown stripes. And then there can also be a gray one as well. They do not have that speared pattern on their head. So that's one of the ways I identify or differentiate, sorry. That's how I differentiate between the eastern rat snake, if it is orangey red, and that red corn snake. These are found in similar habitats that the corn snake is found in. They're also, our eastern rat snake is also called chicken snakes, as they will eat eggs of chickens and baby chicks. So if you have backyard chickens, that is one thing to consider, is some snakes will, of course, potentially eat your eggs or chicks. And then the juvenile rat snake looks a lot like a gray rat snake, which we have a picture of coming up in a minute. But first, I want to introduce you to Maisie, our very own eastern rat snake. So Maisie right now lives at my desk, and it goes on some programs with me, and we all love Maisie here at our office. Maisie currently is a little shy because he is going to shed either tonight or tomorrow, I'm pretty sure. So Jacob, you might want to check in the cage later on today or tomorrow. And Maisie's last shed was as tall as I am. So Maisie is about 5.5 feet long. And Maisie is just absolutely a beautiful, beautiful snake. We all love Maisie here at the office. All right, so here's a gray rat snake. I'm going to go back just for a minute so you can sort of compare the juvenile eastern rat snake down there at the bottom. So very muted tones of that juvenile eastern rat snake. And then here is an adult gray rat snake. So they could be confused, but our gray rat snakes are actually not here in our area. So if you're joining us from Central Florida, gray rat snakes are not here. They're in the panhandle west of the Apalachicola River, but I just wanted to show you one of them because they can be mistaken with that juvenile eastern rat snake. And then another one that is pretty common to see is the ringneck snake. These are so cute. They're pretty tiny. They're 8 to 14 inches. They're really, really skinny, slender snakes. They tend to be black or maybe a slate gray, but most of the ones I see are black. And I've seen here locally, I've seen ones that have red rings and ones that have more of a yellowish ring. So it can go either way. And then the belly and underside of the tail are also bright yellow, orange, or red. And that ring may also be missing, although I usually see them with a ring, or it can be incomplete, not like a full ring around the neck. They are in everywhere here in Florida, and pretty common in suburban neighborhoods, as well as in some of our natural areas. They lay eggs the size of a penny, which is actually a pretty good size considering how small that snake is. They like to eat small invertebrates like worms, slugs, and insects, and they also will eat some small amphibians like lizards and frogs, and even some snakes that are smaller than them. They do have a mildly toxic venom, but we don't consider them a venomous snake because they are not venomous to humans, and they do not like to bite. If they are cornered, of course, any animal will bite to defend itself if it needs to, but these guys rarely will bite. They're pretty shy. They'll flip around a lot. That's sort of their defense mechanism, is they flop around, and they will also release a foul-smelling musky oil, which most snakes will release when they are defending themselves. And then our common garter snake. I think this might be the last one of the most common snakes. So garter snakes are pretty common. They're 18 to 26 inches. They can have sort of a variety of different colors: black, greenish brown, tan, or gray. And then they have stripes that are typically yellow, green, brown, blue, or white. They do have a whitish blue belly. So they'll have one stripe down the middle of the back and one stripe along each side, like you see here in the picture. They are similar to black racers in that they are diurnal, and they will typically race away when confronted. Their tongue, interestingly, is bright red with a black tip. These guys will eat snails and slugs, and females give birth to up to 80 live babies. So this is one of our non-venomous snakes who actually has like live birth, and that's a lot of babies, 80. All right, so I think this is where I start to transition into snakes that are still possible to see. They might be more likely to be seen in natural areas, and they might not be anywhere near as commonly seen as the ones we just covered, especially if you're in your backyard. But still, I just think snakes are so cool that I wanted to share a few more species with you. So this is a rough green snake. These, when I have seen these, they tend to be more arboreal, so they're up in trees often. And I've seen them more in natural areas, like when I've been out hiking, and I haven't seen that many of them. They are bright greens. They're beautiful when you do see them. And then their belly is sort of like a whitish, creamish, or yellowish color. They like to be in dry or hydric forests, hydric meaning wet forest or wetland areas, including maritime, meaning coastal forests, and dune areas. They are, as I mentioned, primarily arboreal, so they're going to be up in the tree foliage, up in the branches, and they prefer densely leafed trees and shrubs. They're also pretty well camouflaged, which is another reason why you might not see them very often. They can be found in suburban neighborhoods, but generally I've seen them in natural areas. It's pretty cool. They have an interesting defensive maneuver in that, I guess you can't call them maneuver because they freeze. So they actually freeze and they sway around to mimic a branch blowing in the wind when they are approached. They can also rapidly flee, but it's sort of cool to see them sort of freeze and just sway a little bit. They eat things like spiders and insects, but they also will eat tree frogs. They stalk their prey, they quickly grasp it, and then they swallow it. And there are no other bright green native snakes in Florida. This is our only bright green native snake. These guys are so cool. The hognose snakes. They have this really interesting looking head and sort of like this upturned keeled scale on the front of their snout. Makes them look like they have sort of a weird nose. They are 20 to 33 inches. They don't get real big, but they are sort of wide or stout bodied with that upturned snout. Most of the ones I see have been grayish or brownish, although they can have a variety of colors. And then they have large irregular blotches on the back and smaller blotches on the side. They often have this dark line that you see here extending from the upper jaw to the eye. They are not in the Florida Keys as far as we know, but they are everywhere else in Florida. And they tend to like sand hills, scrub type environments, pinelands, and hammocks. It did say that they can be found in suburban neighborhoods, although I have never seen one in a suburban neighborhood. So these guys are super cool. Not only do they look interesting, but they have interesting defensive maneuvers. If they are threatened, they will hiss. They will flatten their head to make it look a little bit more like they're a venomous snake. And they will also flatten their body. And it actually makes it look like they have that extra flap like a cobra does. And they will also play dead. So they will actually flip over and remain motionless. Not only that, they'll open up their mouth and hang their tongue out. They are quite the actors. And then if they're really feeling extra threatened, they not only excrete that musky oil, but they will also regurgitate. So I would suggest if you see a hognose snake, you just leave it alone because none of that sounds pleasant to me. All right, this is one of my favorite snakes. I have actually only seen a coachwhip one time. Well, I saw it multiple times, but I'm pretty sure it was the same snake. So I think I've seen one coachwhip my whole life. It was actually at Oscar Shearer State Park here in Sarasota County when I lived there. and I was doing environmental education program field trips for 4th and 5th grade for our schools. And we would walk by, we had the field trips multiple days in a row, and we would walk by this gopher tortoise burrow every day we were doing the field trip. And for about 2 or 3 weeks in a row, every single morning, we would see this Coachwhip snake, and it was long. It was about, I would say about 5 feet long. Actually basking on the apron or the sandy area in front of the gopher tortoise burrow. So it was absolutely beautiful to see. The adult snakes are just unbelievably pretty. They have this black head that then transitions into this khaki body. And when I first saw it, it was in bushes the first day I saw it, and all I saw was its head, and it was doing that periscoping sort of maneuver that I talked about black racers doing. So I thought it was a black racer, but it just looked bigger than it should. And then eventually it came out from the bushes, and I saw its whole body, and I just couldn't even believe what I was seeing because it was so beautiful. The juveniles look different. So you'll see on these slides, we put pictures of the juvenile snakes when they have a different pattern or coloration from the adults. So it takes about a year or so for that black head to actually develop and some of this patterning to go away. And then its common name comes from the large scales on its tail that basically, because of the size, the coloration, and the pattern of its tail, it looks like one of the braided leather whips. So that's how it got its common name. These are diurnal, so they are more likely to be out during the day, and they are one of the longest snakes seen in Florida. They also are extremely fast and excellent climbers. And for those of you, if you've ever been to Oscar Shearer State Park, you might know that the Legacy Trail, which is a biking trail that goes through the park and throughout a lot of Sarasota County. So the Legacy Trail went through the park right near the gopher tortoise burrow where I saw the snake. And one day I was taking the kids on the field trip, and the snake was not there after I'd seen it there multiple days in a row. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And we looked down in the sand of the trail and saw the actual trail of the snake going between the gopher tortoise burrow towards the Legacy Trail. And honest to God, I am not joking, about 20 seconds later, we heard a whole bunch of screaming on the Legacy Trail. So you know that that snake had left the burrow and had gone up across the Legacy Trail. I did see it a couple days after that, so I knew it was okay. It survived its Legacy Trail adventure. This is an eastern ribbon snake. They look a little bit to me like garter snakes. They're 18 to 26 inches, so they're one of our smaller snakes, and they also are extremely slender. They can be brown, olive black, or bluish black, and have a light colored stripe running down the middle of the back and one stripe along each side, just like the garter snakes. They are found throughout Florida and in many different habitats. They are also diurnal, and they eat mostly frogs, salamanders, and they actually will eat freshwater fish too, which I find interesting. All right, so just a few lookalikes that are possible to see because they're native to Florida and they are in this area of Florida. I don't see them all that often, but they are around and they look like a venomous snake. So the two snakes at the top of the slide are our non-venomous lookalikes to our venomous coral snake here on the bottom. So our scarlet king snake is this one right here. And you see that to me, it's the most closely resembling the coral snake because it has pretty distinct bands like the coral snake does. But the differences are going to be the red rings always touch black in our non-venomous scarlet king snake. Whereas in our coral snake, the red rings always touch yellow. Another thing to notice is that both of our non-venomous lookalikes here have a red snout, whereas our coral snake has a black snout. So just a couple things, but this is what I always tell people when I do snake presentations. There's even this rhyme that you see down here at the bottom, red touches black, it's safe for Jack, red touches yellow, kills a fellow. But honestly, when you are worried that you're looking at a venomous snake, are you going to remember the rhyme or remember the things I just told you? Probably not. So really, if you see a snake that's patterned with red, yellow, and black stripes or rings, just stay away. Just go away, let the snake do its thing, because eventually it's going to move and go away as well. Just leave it alone, and then you don't have to be worried about whether or not it's venomous or non-venomous. But those are our lookalikes. This is the scarlet snake. So this is a different species, even though it has a similar common name. It also has red, black, and like yellowish or creamish patterning, but same thing. The red touches black, so it's safe for Jack, and it also has a red snout, unlike our coral snake, where red touches yellow, kills a fellow, and has a black snout. And then water snakes are also very common snakes to see. We are a county with many freshwater lakes and ponds and stormwater ponds. And so it is not surprising to see an aquatic water snake. We have in Florida 3 different species of Nerodia is the genus. 3 different species of non-venomous water snakes. So these water snakes are non-venomous, the Florida green, the brown, and the southern or banded. So on this slide, you see a picture of the brown water snake. They're going to live, like their common name says, near water. They are not aggressive snakes, but they are easily confused with the less common venomous cottonmouth. Brown water snakes will often climb into trees and bask on branches over the water. And if you're kayaking or canoeing or boating and you frighten them, they may jump into the water. And a lot of times these water snakes are killed or persecuted because people are concerned that they're cottonmouths. And really, they are just trying to get away and save themselves, and they actually are non-venomous and not aggressive. Here's another example. This is a southern water snake, and they also will have this defensive mechanism where they're basically perhaps are trying to mimic a venomous snake by flattening out their head and making their head look like it's triangular shaped, which a lot of people associate with venomous snakes because venomous snakes have glands that make their heads look more, or at least the pit vipers have glands that make their heads look more triangular, and that's where their venom is. So this is a non-venomous southern water snake or banded water snake. And here is a cottonmouth, and you can see there are some similarities. In fact, there's a lot of variety in our southern banded water snake where they can be a lot lighter with a lot more obvious patterning, like we're seeing on the cottonmouth. But the cottonmouth can be a lot darker, almost solid charcoal grayish black, and look a little bit more like this picture of the southern water snake. So they are hard to tell apart. Of course, the cottonmouth is going to have a white inside of its mouth. That's how it got its name. This is its defensive mechanism. This is not necessarily indicating it's going to bite, but it is indicating that it's trying to scare whatever is scaring it away from it. Of course, you hopefully do not want to ever get close enough to either of these snakes to see these defensive postures or to worry about getting bitten, especially if it is a cottonmouth. Cottonmouths also look a little bit different on the lower jaw usually as well. All right, so some snake lookalikes. We just put this in here because Jacob and I just thought it was fun because these things are really sort of funny looking and weird. I hate to say that about any wildlife, but I think they're pretty cool because of that. So we do have skinks and race runners locally in this area. And so they look more like a typical lizard, but they are shiny. And if you just saw their head, you might confuse them. Or maybe if you just saw their tail, you might confuse them with a snake. But they do have legs, so they are not a snake. They are a lizard. But then to confuse the issue, we have this thing called a glass lizard. And I have seen one of these and I don't know, they just look so weird because they look part lizard and part snake, and your brain just feels very confused when you see them. So they are actually lizards, but they are legless like a snake. So they're just interesting. And then there's this thing called an amphiuma. And they also, if you just saw part of their body, might look like a snake. They're long and slendered. They have 2 toes and they sometimes have external gills. They are an actual aquatic salamander, but they can be mistaken as a snake. So there you go. And they have a really cool name, Amphiuma. Go figure. Okay, so I just want to mention that there are some snakes in the state of Florida that are threatened and also considered species of special concern. So these are what we would call our listed snakes whenever we're talking about protective wildlife species. There are different categories. The most serious category in terms of decreased or declining population would be endangered. So we don't have any Florida snakes that are on the endangered list, but we do have listed snakes. Threatened is the next category down, and then species of special concern. But I do just want you to see this beautiful eastern indigo snake. This is one of our threatened snakes, one of our protected snakes. It is so rare to see them. The last time I saw one was somewhere around, I think about 15 years ago, and it was on Kea Costa. So I have not seen one of these in a really long time. They are much bigger and much more wide bodied than a black racer. Also, the black racer has that white jaw, whereas our eastern indigo snake is going to have more of this reddish, brownish color to its jaw. These snakes are just absolutely beautiful. So their population has declined to the point that they are now listed. Here are some of the threats to snake populations, like with all wildlife. So if you've listened to my other webinars, this is sounding like a broken record because habitat loss and fragmentation, most of that due to development or building of roads and buildings, is what's the #1 threat to most of our wildlife species. Also, of course, with snakes, there are many people who dislike or fear snakes, and so there's been unwarranted persecution of snakes. Sometimes they're just killed because people are afraid of them or concerned that they might be venomous when most likely they're a non-venomous lookalike. What you can do to help our snakes: become snake aware and educate others. So awareness and understanding is always our best tool against fear or feeling uncomfortable about things. So the more we understand about snakes, or the more you're able to identify a non-venomous snake versus a venomous snake, the more comfortable you're going to be. And then share that information with others. And if you feel comfortable and you have the right type of location, you can help provide snake-friendly habitat in your yard. So that might be if you have a larger yard and you have sort of an area further away from your house or where people and pets might be, that you could have a debris pile, for instance. That's a great place for snakes to be able to take up residence. You can report sightings of rare snakes to help our Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission learn more about them and track them. And so I listed the 4 species there that are considered rare that the FWC wants to know about. And we do have a link here that allows you to actually report sightings of both our rare snakes. And then also, if you saw a snake that you thought was not a native snake that you were concerned about, there are ways to report non-native reptiles as well. And no matter which thing you're trying to report, you always want to try to include a photograph so that they can help identify it, a location, and a date of when you saw that snake. So what to do if you encounter a snake? This is where we usually get the most questions from people is, oh my gosh, what do I do if I come across a snake in my yard or when I'm hiking or kayaking? So snakes generally would rather avoid encounters So just try to move away. You don't even have to observe if you don't want to. Stand back and observe if you want to, or just move in the other direction. Most of our Florida snakes are harmless. Remember, there's somewhere almost 50 native snakes, and 6 of those are venomous, and only 4 of those are found in Central Florida. If you do encounter a venomous snake, you want to stay calm, and once again, just move away from that snake. Snakes are not aggressive, not even our venomous snakes are not prone to be aggressive, and do not attack unless intentionally disturbed. You want to never approach or pick up a snake. They are wildlife. Even if you think it is a non-venomous snake, there's no reason for you to approach it and pick it up. And then University of Florida does have a number of resources on learning about snakes, dealing with encounters with snakes. So does the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation. So there are definitely things, if you want more information about those issues, then there are resources for you. If you are in a position where you feel like it's necessary to remove the snake from your area, like one gets into your house, for instance, here are a few tips. Probably this, you want to stay as far away from it as possible. So finding like a large garbage can, not a small one, a large one, like your actual trash can that you put out at the curb, and getting a long handled broom or stick or something like that, that you can shoo the snake and try to shoo it into the garbage can. And then cover the garbage can, and take that garbage can and release the snake by turning the garbage can over and then getting away from it and just allowing the snake its own time to come out. Really best case scenario, you don't even try to remove the snake unless it's really somewhere that you feel unsafe. These are some of the sources that Jacob and I used to put together our presentation today. We want to thank you very much for joining us today and learning more about snakes, and hopefully celebrating them on July 16th on World Snake Day.